Have you seen Beauty in Black? I've been watching it recently and it is crazy. It's about this girl, Kimmy, who's living in Chicago, who's being human trafficked by this man named Jules in order to avoid jail time. She has to work at a strip club in order to pay back the money that she owes to this man. And as I was watching it, I couldn't help but think that, this sounds a little bit like the K-pop industry, which sounds crazy. I know. But it feels the same. It feels like indentured servitude. Slavery is a bit too crazy because yes, they technically are getting paid, but having a 13-year-old sign a 360 deal doesn't really seem like a fair or ethical operation. In today's video, we're going to be discussing how this system even works. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how we can more ethically consume this unethical industry. There are a lot of different K-pop groups, but most come to be in a very similar way. For example, in the American music industry, we have a variety of independent artists, meaning they're not signed to a major label. A lot of times they're hoping to get a major record deal, and that's kind of the pipeline for success for them. However, in the K-pop context, there are not a lot of independent K-pop artists, and the ones that we are seeing now is more of a new phenomenon. The most common way to become a K-pop artist is through an entertainment company. These entertainment companies hold auditions where people will sing, dance, act, model, rap, do the whole gamut of things, and then the company will decide whether or not they want to let this person become a trainee. It's important to note that it isn't just merit-based. They don't just take the best singer, the best dancer, etc., etc. They are looking for a vibe. These entertainment companies are curating a group. So they are evaluating not on the basis of talent alone, but also can this person be molded to fit the vibe of a group. It's not really a fair process, but that's how it is. If someone is able to meet the criteria that the company has in mind, they then become a trainee. And once you're a trainee, they low-key make you obligated to do anything that they say within that contract. I tried to look it up and I wasn't able to find anyone's word for word contract, but from the general consensus of what former trainees have said and just what is allowed legally, it's kind of obvious that these contracts are ridiculous. To me, I think it's fair that the contract would stipulate what types of practices that they would have to attend, what penalties there would be for not attending rehearsals, or different things that are related to becoming a trainee. If you sign up to be a trainee, you have to do the training. That makes sense. However, when we get down into the nitty-gritty of it, it seems like they ask a lot more than is reasonable to ask anyone. Within a trainee contract, somebody can be forced to live in a dormitory instead of at home, regardless of who else lives at the dormitory or how old they are or any other factors. If the company says you have to do it, you have to do it. They can control your image. You may not be allowed to get tattoos. You may not be allowed to cut your hair or dye your hair, because if you do those things out of your own free will, it may not go along with the image that the company is trying to curate. More shocking or alarming than things like controlling your movements or your outward appearance is the fact that in the mid-2010s, there was a very common trend of not allowing trainees to have personal cell phones. To make matters even worse, there were a lot of non-Korean trainees during this time that was becoming really popular to have international idols. So there were Chinese, Thai, like Canadian, American people not able to get into contact with their families because they weren't even allowed access to a phone. They were sending snail mail like it was the freaking 1980s or something. That is insane to me. These trainees are majority teenagers as well. I'm sure you can see it how young the idols who debut are. If they're debuting at 15 and they've been training for 3 years, you do the math. It's crazy that they have small children doing these things where they're expected to put training above everything else. Their family, their self-expression, even their schooling. While the events such as practices, rehearsals, evaluations, etc. that are required may be for a restricted amount of hours, there is a social expectation to spend a lot of time training or practicing skills that you've been told that you need to improve. And this is often done at the expense of their schooling. Now, I'm not saying they all flunking out or anything like that. Like, let's not be crazy. But it is extremely detrimental in some of the most developmentally important stages of your life, like your early adolescence, to be staying up late, overworking yourself, and trying to do well in school at the same time. Those things are incompatible. On top of that, a lot of trainees have really strict weight expectations put onto them, even though they're growing and that they're teenagers, and things are going to change over time because that's how growing up works. That's how puberty works. The companies don't take their humanity into account and just have this very strict expectation of how they're going to expect you to look, act, and behave. And while, of course, to a certain extent, the trainees have the free will to step outside of the bounds, if every trainee that does well and goes on to debut are the ones who barely eat, barely sleep, and overwork themselves, it sends a signal to everybody else that that is how we succeed. So of course, if they want to succeed, they're going to follow in the footsteps of other successful people. And it's a very detrimental cycle. And maybe it would all be worth it if going through that really rough training period would lead to becoming a successful recording K-pop artist. But no, it doesn't necessarily lead to that. I don't know if you know this, but some trainees end up training indefinitely. Let's look at the case of Twice. Love Twice, went to the concert, had a great time. But the leader of Twice was training for 9 years before Twice came about. And then she had to fight for her life to be in Twice because she was on the freaking Survival show, and that's how they made Twice happen. I can't even think about it without making myself mad. And yes, you can say, oh, well, it paid off. They doing good now. You can say that. But I don't think anything is worth it. Because there was no guarantee that Twice was going to actually end up being successful and have the longevity that they've had. She could have been doing all of that for nothing. For various reasons, many trainees across K-pop companies will drop out or quit before they even get close to debut. The really unfortunate part of this trainee contract is that there is no guaranteed compensation for your time. In fact, you can end up owing the company because when you are a trainee, you're incurring a debt. Yes, you're not paying out of pocket for every dance class and vocal lesson and all those things, but the company has to pay for it. And they're expecting a return on their investment. If you do not go through the trainee program and end up being a recording artist, they expect to recoup that money one way or another. So there have been, unfortunately, times where people end up owing some sum of money to a company that they've spent their youth at, but they have no actually anything to show from it. So we have these people who spent their time, instead of trying really hard in school and being able to have a beneficial career from that, they trained really hard at the company, and now they don't have anything to show for it, and now they're trying to figure out, where do I go in life if I'm not a K-pop artist? Because I spent some really important years training to be a K-pop artist.
Of course, we did make money from concerts, fan meetings, and album sales, but covering years of training and album production cost is not easy, and that's the reality of an industry with a success rate of about 0.01.
It really sucks. It really sucks to be somebody who either has to leave or genuinely never actually debuts. But that's not the case for everybody. Some people actually do end up debuting as a K-pop artist. And to a certain extent, it's a little bit better. There are freedoms that the K-pop trainee doesn't have access to that the K-pop artist does. But there are also a lot more obligations. Now you're in a phase where you can start repaying some of that debt, where at the same time you're also incurring debt as the company works on new things for you. When you become an artist for a company, you also, especially at smaller companies, become a face for the company as well. So there is more scrutiny and more pressure placed upon you. You have to train, you have to promote your group, you have to stay skinny, you may even have to get plastic surgery because that is what the company wants. And even if you hurt yourself trying to reach the standards set out before you, there's no guarantee that you're going to be successful. Just because you debut doesn't mean that your group is going to be at the top of the charts, even if you come from a successful company. The competition has only gotten more fierce over time. As K-pop continues to grow in popularity, it becomes exponentially harder to make it to the top. If there's 500 K-pop groups that debut, there's still only 10 spots in the top 10 on the K-pop charts. We can't all be in the top 10. And that idea of debt that trainees may owe, just multiply that times 1,000 for failed K-pop artists. Failed in the sense that they maybe released one album and then they have to disband because they didn't make any noise, so people aren't going to give them another chance. But me personally, I love a Nugu group, so if you have any unknown or lesser known K-pop groups that you want to promote, put it in the comments. I'd love to give them a listen. Let's help them pay that debt off, get their royalties up. It's sickening to think about the fact that even if you're a successful group, that doesn't mean that you're doing better than other people, which is crazy because you would think if you're a successful artist, you're on top of the world. You don't have anything to worry about anymore. That is not the case. I genuinely think being a successful K-pop artist is a definition of suffering from success, because maybe you're actually making money now. You can send some money to your parents. You have a little bit of spending money. You can breathe a little bit easier, but the pressure is still on because you have to maintain that relevance. You have to continue to develop. You have to retain your fans, and you just become more and more public. And with more public awareness of you, the more scrutiny you face, the more pressure is on. It is a feedback loop that is so toxic. On top of that, you're overburdened with work. Think about how often the average American artist is releasing music. I would say between every 2 to 5 years, a popular artist will release a full-length album, and they'll go on their little press tour and they'll kind of keep it quiet in between, and that's just the way things go. K-pop groups, successful K-pop groups are releasing mini albums, EPs, every 6 months. They don't get a break. When they're promoting one album, they're preparing the next one. There is no rest. They have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go on Music Bank. It is crazy. Like when Jungkook was singing Seven, he was not talking about sexual relations. He was talking about how often he works. He works 7 days a week because he is a successful artist. There is no other option for a successful K-pop artist, because if you stop, everybody's gonna forget about you. Nobody's gonna care because there's always something new coming out. It's a blessing and a curse. So no matter if you're just a trainee, you're an unsuccessful K-pop artist, or you're a successful K-pop artist, everything sucks. Don't you just love capitalism? It's obvious I have a problem with the way things are. Like, that is undebatable. If you watch this whole video and you think I don't have a problem with the way things are currently, I suggest you do some listening comprehension challenges, exercises in order to improve that. But just to be clear, I have a problem with how the K-pop industry is. However, I still listen to K-pop. Whoa. The hypocritical nature of man. To me, it's important to increase the awareness and increase the ethical approaches people can take to dealing with something as unethical as the music industry, specifically the K-pop music industry. We see a lot of controversial things happening within the industry, and I think the best way to do it, because it is a capitalistic industry, is to put our money where our mouths are. Or put your money where your mouth is. I don't pay for bubble subscription. I'm not paying for premium nothing. I barely buy albums in general. But especially, even if it's your favorite group, if they're doing something that you do not agree with morally, ethically, do not put money towards it, and state what it will take for you to continue to support them monetarily. Because the only thing that moves these companies is money. They're not just doing it for love of the game. They would probably be, coloring or something. If they were just doing it for love of the game, they wouldn't have all this money put behind stuff if it wasn't about money. It's about money. So just put your money where your mouth is and get with like-minded fans as well. And don't just be glaze. Like, be with people who are willing to put their foot down and make it an organized coalition to stand against unethical practices within the industry. And I genuinely do believe that there will be benefits from that, even if it's just you feeling more comfortable with your decision. I also think we can do a little bit better when it comes to the types of comments that we make about K-pop idols. When we comment about things like weight or appearance or work ethic, it can perpetuate some of the harmful things from the K-pop industry. When I made my video about Manon and her potential exit from Cat's Eye, I specifically was critiquing the way that people said that she was lazy and that she didn't show up when she literally has a weak immune system and she's literally just sick. When we have these people who are overworking themselves and genuinely wearing down their bodies, and we judge people for not wanting to do the same, there's something wrong with that. So we shouldn't be like, oh, like this K-pop idol is fat. This K-pop idol has a big nose and dark skin and they're this, and that. We should be able to listen to the music, watch the choreographies and the performances, and evaluate it on that basis. We should not take our personal grievances, our personal biases, judge people off of that, because it only makes the problems within the industry worse. And finally, don't make K-pop your identity. You are so much more than that. You're not working at the PR firm for the company. You're not a marketer. You don't have to constantly only say positive things about your favorite artist and put any other artist down. You do not have to be loyal to your capo. I don't think that there is any organized crime family that's going to come after you if you say you don't like the new insert group here song, okay? That is it for today's video. Let me know if you actually learned something, because a lot of people don't really know how the industry works. So I love to hear from people who have liked K-pop for a while and people who are also new to the whole genre. And I will see you next time. Bye.